USC Oregon State being dumped on Pac-12 network. It's one of the biggest games of week 4. It's one of the biggest games of USC's season. You could make the case it's the biggest Pac-12 conference game for USC football since the 2017 Pac-12 championship season under Sam Darnold, and it's on Pac-12 network. Now, I get why it's happening. ESPN and Fox, they want to have those Lincoln Riley prime dates later in the season when USC is expected to be a Pac-12 contender, maybe even a playoff contender. I get it. I understand how it works, and there has to be 3 Pac-12 network games because that's the number of non-conference home games that USC plays. Like, I get all of that. But really, to have a system this bad, where this is a possibility, and also to have, Pac-12 network still not being, supremely visible, not being on the most accessible cable tier, not being on DirecTV, all these chickens are coming home to roost. And, this is why USC moseyed on off to the Big Ten, right? This is the kind of BS, which is why the Trojans left. And it's why the USC fan base is now united more than ever about, let's abandon these losers in the Pac-12. Let's go to a real conference that treats us like adults. We don't get stuck with this kind of mess right here against Oregon State. It's an outrage.
So, folks, leave your comments and questions there in the live chat. We will get to, of course, a review of the Stanford win, 41-28, and, of course, a look at an interesting matchup with Fresno State. But since we're on this topic, I'm going to call up the schedule. I've called it up here. I'm going to post it on the screen. We can kind of run through some comparisons of what could have been decided here and what could be. And I'm guessing most of you do not get the Pac-12 network. Of course, we're talking primarily to USC fans. So there is probably a good portion of you that do, but even for the not casual college football fan, but a big college football fan that's not either invested in USC or Oregon State, i.e. myself, I want to see USC and Oregon State play. And again, relegated to the Pac-12 network.
Yeah. So Mark, on September 24, let's just go through how many games get really good treatment, meaning that they're on ESPN, they're on Fox, they're on Fox Sports 1, ESPN 2. Like, all of those are reasonably prime placements for college football games. You get significant visibility on all 4 of those networks. All right. Northern Illinois, Kentucky is an ESPN 2 game. Wow. Toledo, San Diego State is a Fox Sports 1 game. Iowa, Rutgers, Fox Sports 1. Stanford, Washington, FS1. Maryland, Michigan is Fox. Missouri, Auburn is on ESPN, the mothership. Duke, Kansas is on Fox Sports 1. All while USC and Oregon State, this huge Pac-12 game, is on Pac-12 network. You can't make this stuff up. And USC fans, myself, if USC Oregon State was at least on ESPNU, like, that would still be treating the game like dirt, but it would be miles better than Pac-12 network because of the accessibility, the subscriptions, the DirecTV angle. Like, ESPNU would be better than Pac-12 network, but we can't even get that. And this is how bad the contractual arrangement is. What it also says, Mark, is that, like George Kliavkoff, he just came into the job a couple years too late. Like, if he came into the job in 2019 instead of 2021, maybe he could say, like, hey, we need to get all this revised. But 1 year, just not long enough. Like, he had to meet with the schools. He had to, establish relationships. 1 year, you can't just unwind everything all at once. He needed 2 more years than what he actually had to scrap this contract, start over, do a new round of media rights. He just did not have enough time. So, just want to make sure that Kliavkoff isn't the guy catching the heat for this, because this is not his call. This was not under his control. This was about ESPN and Fox not wanting USC now. They want to have Lincoln Riley later, and because of the various stipulations and whatnot. And, USC Cal, that's a Pac-12 network game. USC, Arizona State, that is a Pac-12 network level game. But because ESPN and Fox want to move the chess pieces around the board, then we get stuck with this. And there's no like kind of ESPNU out clause, or there's no Fox Sports 1 safety valve like that. It all goes back to Pac-12 network, and it goes back to a much earlier point in time.
So, Matt, for any of these matchups that you mentioned at noon, of course, I can understand that based on the timing of the game. But yeah, down into that 3:30 window, I think the one that really should slap people across the face is Toledo and San Diego State on FS1.
No question. And we saw San Diego State get blown to bits by Arizona, and Arizona's not as good as some of us thought, myself included. Got to be accountable there. So like San Diego State, that's certainly not a high value game, and against Toledo as well. You know, Toledo was a lot better in previous years under a guy named Matt Campbell than it is now. So yeah, they're like, and Duke, Kansas. Great college basketball game for Fox Sports 1. But no, that's a football game, and it gets a Fox Sports 1 game window. So yeah, and of course, you know, Northern Illinois, Kentucky, that is a 7 Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific game. So that's in the not the late night window, but it's in the evening window. That's prime real estate, and that is an ESPN2 game. So the idea that USC, Oregon State couldn't get fit in on ESPN2, wow. I just want to break something. I just want to break something.
Yeah, Kentucky, Northern Illinois. Okay, Kentucky, really good football team. Not a great brand yet. Still working on it. And Northern, it's not an SEC game. If it was, I would take USC, Oregon State if Kentucky over Kentucky, Missouri, Kentucky, South Carolina. But I could understand an argument there. But a non-conference game against a MAC opponent. Wow.
And Northern Illinois is not what it once was under Dave Doran and Jerry Kill. That's the other thing. Like, NIU's not good. NIU is a pretty mediocre program right now. So, you won the MAC, but, Northern Illinois had to fend off an FCS team earlier this year. And the Huskies don't have the same heft or stature that they did when they had Jordan Lynch. So, like, that is not a glamour game by any stretch against Kentucky.
We'll never know, but it would be interesting to know which game would have outrated Iowa Rutgers versus USC Oregon State. Again, if you look at those matchups within the scope of the conference race, there's no comparison between the magnitude of those two games. It's USC and Oregon State.
No question at all. And of course, hey, Mark, I mean, you have an Iowa show coming up after our USC show here at the Voice of College Football. And you know that Iowa Rutgers is going to be a kind of game in which it's just going to make you want to stab your eyes with a fork. Like it is good. That's going to be a hard to watch game. Whereas, USC, we can debate whether USC is good, but USC is not boring. Like USC games are going to be fun games throughout the season. You know this. You know you're going to get 800, 900, 1,000 total yards. You know you're going to get at least 70 points most of the time. I mean, the USC Stanford was 69. It should have been a lot more on both sides. So it's not just that USC's, an interesting team, but USC is a fun team, both because of how great the offense is and how bad the defense is. And I do understand the idea of, if USC's in the hunt in November for all the big prizes, you want that television real estate with the Trojans. One of the unfortunate nuances of all this, Mark, and it's another reason why this game is on Pac-12 Network. I mean, it shouldn't be, but just in terms of explaining the mechanics to everybody, USC has a home game against Colorado in November. It's on a Friday. So being on a Friday, Fox gets that game. Fox Sports 1 gets that game. So because it's on a Friday and it has that prime real estate, it gets slotted to Fox, the Fox umbrella. And so that takes it out of play for Pac-12 Network. That should have been a Pac-12 Network game. Like USC is going to beat Colorado by 70 billion. But because it's on FS1, then that's a game Pac-12 Network can't have in terms of the allocation, the distribution of those slots.
So what is the agreement between the Pac-12 and its member schools in regards to how many times that they have to play on the Pac-12 network? I thought it was just once.
It's the number of non-conference home games. It's equivalent to that. And how they arrive at that math, I mean, I'm not entirely sure, but that is the stipulation. So USC has non-con home games against Rice, Fresno State, and Notre Dame. So 3 is the number. And in terms of fitting all the pieces of the puzzle together, maybe if you're USC, you should have thought, oh, let's play that Rice game on the road in Houston so that the Oregon State game wouldn't have been subject to potential relegation to Pac-12 Network. But, how can you think about all of these specific dominoes in advance, right? And I imagine that, if that was ever a consideration, the counterbalance would have been, oh, but Oregon State's going to be a really big game. And see, that's part of what kills me, right? Because how much importance I've placed on that Oregon State game the whole off season. So looking forward to watching that game. So I have DirecTV, so I am up a creek without a paddle for that one. So just
I, by the way, am in good shape for this game. Personally, I still can appreciate the fervor because we're here to support college football and college football fans. I can now get the game. I wouldn't have been able to get the game 3 months ago, but I can now get the Pac-12 network.